I was in a wheelchair. I had a wound vacuum attached to my leg from a biopsy gone bad. I had a feeding tube hanging out of my stomach, but at least I was home. After 77 days of hospitalization, I was back in my own house. I never imagined that I would be back home without the ability to eat. But whatever had attacked my muscular system had also attacked my ability to swallow. Very gradually, I began to gain some muscular strength back in other areas. I moved from the wheelchair to a walker to a cane, but I was a weak guy. Weak not only in body, but also in spirit. Now I was sequestered. I was home alone day after day in my house, recovering. Recovery isn't for the faint of heart. Month after month passed, unable to eat. That's hard enough, just the lack of the pleasure of having a meal, but as significant for me was how lonely it felt. I would sit at some tables and try to not make people feel too awkward because they were eating and I wasn't, but mostly I was just alone. Since the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, people tried to figure it out for me and came up with all these formulas, all these solutions. Take communion every day for 30 days, bind this curse, have this certain group pray for you, go to this place, to this healing room, take this supplement, take this other supplement, it's better. I tried to keep leaning into God, the God who had saved my life, the God who had spared me, but I couldn't find him, frankly. I read the Bible every day, but it felt like sandpaper to my soul. It was just irritating, all these promises, all these miracles, and I wasn't experiencing any of it. But gradually I realized that he kept showing up all the time through people, and he kept showing up most significantly through my wife. And I learned a principle at that time that you can hang on to somebody else's faith when you have none left of your own. And there were many days when I kept clinging to Joanna's faith. She believes, she's trusting God, she's hanging on to him. One day God gave me the picture of the potter's hands working a pot on the wheel. The pot was being constructed, the wheel was spinning, the clay was soft, the hands were wet. I kind of like that pot that was being built when suddenly those hands took that pot, took that clay, and reduced it right back down to the base. He didn't discard it. The wheel kept spinning. The clay was still soft. The hands were still forming it. But the potter had chosen in his sovereignty to rework that which had been a lifetime process. And I said, God, if that's what's going on here, if that's what's happening in my life, that you are rebuilding me, you're reshaping me, I'll accept that. This was over the period of months, not hours, not days. This is months where I have to learn that in solitude, in quietness, in being sequestered, that God does some of his best work. That even though I couldn't find him, I couldn't see him, I couldn't hear from him for weeks, months, there was a deeper work going on in the soul. When we think of sanctification, we often think in terms of maybe some spiritual disciplines of reading our Bible or fasting or praying. We might think in terms of some good teaching we get, but what was happening for me was the sanctification that takes place in silence. I didn't see it coming, and I didn't like it while it was happening. I began to say it this way: I don't like the wrapping that the gift is being delivered in, but I do like the gift itself. That through the months, I began to realize that in my marriage and in my relationship with God and in my personality, that a deeper work was happening than could have happened without the experience of suffering.